Just remember to stop it when you're finished, and give us a shout if you like.
My name's Richard Turner, and this is my evaluation of Old versus New for the Alice in Wonderland in 1951 and 2010. So, in a nutshell, in the 1951 version, Alice is having trouble tutor lesson from her sister. She's in the garden. When she gets given a break, she spots a peculiar-looking rabbit. She chases after it, which results in her crawling down the rabbit hole. And then, when she's going along, there's a steep bit which she didn't see, and she falls in. She goes down the hole and she's exposed to all sorts of strange and wonderful things. And when she gets to the bottom, she falls into Wonderland. Throughout the film, she travels through Wonderland, and she meets many strange and wonderful people. She ends up having to run for her life from the Queen of Hearts towards the end, and just before she meets her doom and gets beheaded by the Queen, the camera cross-cuts to a shot of her sleeping in the garden, and then she wakes up and she realises it's all a dream. In the 2010 version, this is all the same, and apart from the fact that instead of having a lesson in the garden, she gets proposed to by a man she's not interested in, and then she asks to go for a walk and think about it, and she chases the rabbit, and then she does exactly the same thing. She falls down the hole. She travels through Wonderland and meets all the wonderful people again, but they're all slightly different from the original and all play a different role. She then fulfills her destiny and defeats the Jabberwocky, like everyone was telling her she had to. After she's killed the Jabberwocky, by drinking the Jabberwocky's blood, she can wish to go home. When everything comes round, she comes back to reality and climbs out the rabbit hole, and then decides that she doesn't want to get married, and she tells everyone. In both films, Alice is fed up with people always telling her what to do, especially in the 2010 version, as she's at a point in her life where people expect her to get married. At the end of this film, she ends up starting a career instead of a marriage. I'd class both of these films as a fantasy genre. The 1951 was released on the 28th of July in 1951. The video release wasn't until 81. It was then re-released in 97 in better quality. The DVD release was in April 2005, and most recently they re-released a 60th anniversary edition in 2011. Most notably was the character in Alice was called Catherine Beaumont. She had a very different role in her character as the original, as the new 2010 Alice. Because of the 1951 Alice was animated, they needed voices. Catherine Beaumont was cast to play Alice at aged 11. Her job was not only to be the voice of Alice, but the human performance of Alice, which the animators drew over and sketched out to create the animated Alice, which you can see in this picture. They've got films and snapshots of her, and they've gone over it in pen to create the animated Alice. In the 1951 version, the writers were listed here. I won't read them out because there's a lot of them. And it was produced by Walt Disney. It was directed by Clyde, Wilfred and Hamilton. In the 2010 version, there was only one writer, one screenplay, called Linda Wolverton. And compared to the long list of writers before, you can see how times have changed. And there's a lot less people. There's fewer directors, and the producer, although produced by Walt Disney himself, I'm sure he had some help. The 1951 version was released in 1951 in the US. The budget was $3,000 and box office only made. The budget was $3 million, and the box office only made $2,400,000. So their gross profit was a minus of $600,000. Their gross margin was minus 25%, and their markup was minus 20. After 60 years, the sales of VHS and DVDs started to go up. When they released the 2-disc edition in order to promote the new 2010 version, and then made the new 60th anniversary edition, the sales of the 6-year-old film continued. So the profit of this has been going up for the last 60 years in video and DVD releases. Alice in Wonderland received a lukewarm response from the box office. The film's gross profit was a negative figure of 600,000. However, it carried on making money for over 60 years. This was because it re-released and tried to recover money soon after the original release. It was then released on VHS and DVD. It made more money on a limited edition 60th anniversary edition DVD again. The sales of the DVD went up when the Tim Burton 2010 video was released. Alice in Wonderland 2010 edition was released on the 5th of March 2010 in the USA. The budget was 200 million and the box office was, I took the total of the box office from July. It was that figure that I don't know how to pronounce. The gross profit was shown here, which was 40% and the markup was 68%. Alice in Wonderland received a triumphant, to say the least, response at the box office. The gross profit was an amazing £134,184,206. However, that number has and still is rising from the last count due to DVD sales. Alice in Wonderland 1951 was shot on a 35mm negative film, and it stretched over a total of 8 reels, which is 2,122.93 metres. The final film edited amounted to 75 minutes and 1 hour and 15 minutes. Alice in Wonderland 2010 was shot on a 35mm Kodak Vision 2 digital camera in HD. The final edited film amounted to 108 minutes. That's 1 hour and 48 minutes. So you can see the times, the length of the film was much different, very different. The distribution. Alice in Wonderland 1951 had a USA release on the 28th of July 1951, and it was released 2 days earlier in New York. The UK release was actually the same as the New York release, and the 2010 was released in USA in the 1st of June, and it was released 3 days later in the UK. Between the 30s and the early 50s, Walt Disney produced and directed and created a lot of films. However, the World War paused his career. Walt Disney had started the production company of Disney before the war. However, it had devastated it. The creation of Cinderella in 1950 picked the company back up again and made it profitable. The success was short-lived, as the next full-length feature film, Alice in Wonderland, nearly destroyed his company again. It was at a loss rather than a profit. People say that this is because those people weren't ready and used to seeing such an abstract idea in moving image. In those days, the idea of Alice in Wonderland would have been very stressful and would have affected the audience a lot. During this time, animated films became very popular. As I've said earlier, Cinderella was a brilliant success. Lady and the Tramp in 1955 was the most profitable since Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. Peter Pan had a lot of positive reviews. Sleeping Beauty was over twice as expensive as each of the 3 preceding Disney films. At first, Sleeping Beauty received mixed reviews, but today it is hailed as one of the best animated films ever. Made thanks to the stylish designs and painted Evelyn Earl, who also was the director of the film. So you can see here I've shown the dates of the 4 films that were seeded. Came after Alice in Wonderland was here. You had Snow White in 1937, and then Cinderella in 1950, Peter Pan in 1953, Lady and the Tramp in 1955, and Sleeping Beauty in 1959. I've listed some of the key characters from the film and there's a comparison from there. Interestingly, Tweedledum and Tweedledee both times was played by one person. Star comparisons. The character of Alice. Catherine Beaumont was aged 11 when she was cast to portray the cast of Alice for the pre-production. Before this, she had played Muriel in Secret Garden as an actual person, not an animated film. And after this, she went on to perform Walt Disney, Wendy Darling in Peter Pan. And this had the same setup as her part in Alice. It was an animated film. She played the voice and pre-recorded the film. Mia Wasikowska. Mia was 21. Was a 21-year-old girl who was cast to play the role of Alice in Alice in Wonderland. Mia has gone on to participate in many films. Most memorable was her starring role as Jane in Jane Eyre. The Queen of Hearts. Vera Felton was employed to play the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland in 1951. She started her career in 1917 and then started a steady career in 1937. She worked all the way up until her death at 76 in 1966, yet her part in the Jungle Book as the elephant was released in 1967, a year after her death. Her career included a lot of roles as speaking for animated characters. She also took a part in Ladies the Tramp as Aunt Sarah in 1955 and Sleeping Beauty as one of the fairies, Flora, in 1959. Helena Bonham Carter was the role seen. That was the Vera Felton as Queen of Hearts, and this is Helen Bonham Carter. Helena's career was mostly quite quiet. She had a lot of roles in TV all the way back to 1937, as a few bigger roles, for example, Fight Club in 1999, Planet of the Apes in 2001, and Big Fish in 2003. In 2007, her career really took off with her role in Harry Potter. She then has starred in Sweeney Todd in 2007, Alice in Wonderland in 2010, and most recently, and indeed most memorable, Les Mis in 2012. A star comparison of the Mad Hatter. Ed was born in November 1886 and had a son in 1960, and his son suggested he went into show business, and he started his career in 1927. The film Rubber Hills at the age of 41, and he is most memorable for his parts in The Edwin Show in 1949 and Mary Poppins in 1964. Between those two memorable roles, he played the part of the Mad Hatter in 1951, and this part still lives on as one of the best Disney films of all time. He was still acting all the way up to his death at age 79 in 1966. In 2010, Johnny Depp was cast to play the Mad Hatter. Johnny was born in Kentucky, USA in June 1963 and began acting in 1984 at the age of 21. In the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, this instantly launched his career, and he has had a steady career for the last 29 years. He's now one of the most famous and sought-after actors of our time. His part in Alice in Wonderland got reviews as stole the film. He's now branched out into other areas of the industry such as directing, producing and writing and more. Social, political and regulatory factors of the Alice in Wonderland in 1951. In 1947 to 1991, the Cold War between the USA and the USSR was affecting the world. Although Alice in Wonderland was a book written by Lewis Carroll in 1865, Disney decided that they could modify the story into a film to be relevant to the times. Because of the Cold War, the key character to link this was the White Rabbit. All the way through the film, Alice is chasing the White Rabbit. He is always running to the palace, shouting, "I'm late, I'm late," and looking over his oversized pocket, even though throughout the whole film his clock says 5 o'clock, as you can see here. It always says 5 o'clock. Alice is trying to keep up with him, and this is a representation of the arms race between the two countries. And the fact that this shows that he isn't in a rush with regards to time, but in a rush in the sense of a war. Like he needs to be somewhere now. This was the same for the arms race for the Cold War, and as a result, this was the same for the arms race that the Cold War was a result of. It was the race again. It wasn't a race against time, but a race to be more ready than the opposite side. At one stage in Alice in Wonderland, Alice gets stuck in the White Rabbit's house because she grows too big for it while she's in there. And this causes massive issues, obviously, and represents the start of the Cold War. This point of the story continues, and they get more people involved, such as the Dodo and Bill, the lizard with a ladder. These two characters represent the countries of China, Vietnam and Korea, who all helped the USSR in the arms race. USSR is represented by the White Rabbit and the USA is represented by Alice. Once Bill decides that he doesn't want, once Bill the lizard with the ladder decides that he doesn't want to actually help with the White Rabbit, he runs off because he's, once Bill decides he doesn't actually want to help because he's scared that Alice is a monster, and the White Rabbit runs off because he's late and Alice goes back to the right size, the fact that these three characters leave the scene isn't relevant to the story of the Cold War. But the Dodo stays and carries on to take preparing himself for the fight with Alice. He actually says no cooperation at all, can't have monsters about, jolly well carry on myself. During the Cold War, that's exactly what China did. They stopped helping the USSR and withdrew, but they built their own arms so that if we did get into a nuclear war, they would be prepared. There are a few synergies between the films. In the 1951 version, the film is aimed mostly at children, whereas 2010 is slightly for an older group of about 16 to 24. In the 1951 version, the Mad Hatter is just in one scene and doesn't play such a significant role, but in the 2010, he is the most prominent ally for Alice. In both films, Alice is the Red Queen. In both films, Alice and the Red Queen are friends when they first meet, until the Queen realises she's against her. However, in 2010, this relationship is a lot more magnified, and then the fact that they're not friends anymore is a lot more prominent. In the 2010 version, there is an older sister, the White Queen. She is the younger sister to the Red Queen. Everyone prefers the White Queen based on her better nature and beauty. This is the reason she is a sworn enemy of the Red Queen. In the original, the Dormouse has virtually no part at all. She literally just drinks tea at the party and sings Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. She's seen as a pet of the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. In the remake, she has a part almost all the way through the film, and she has a name, Mulliumpkin. In the 1951 version, the only enemy is the Red Queen, but in the 2010 version, the Red Queen has the help of her pet, the Jabberwocky. This is a dragon-style creature that Alice has to defeat and win the war, win the Wonderland War. In the original, this whole section is minimised to the fact that the Red Queen wants to cut Alice's head off because of a big misunderstanding involving the Cheshire Cat. This stops right before Alice is beheaded, and she wakes up and it was all a dream. Vertical and horizontal integration. The original was produced purely by Walt Disney Productions, and the producer was Walt Disney himself, shown at the top. The remake was not only produced by Walt Disney Productions, they had the help of the other productions companies such as Roth Films, Team Todd, Zanuck Companies, and a Tim Burton production. It's notable that Tim Burton was the director and producer. This helped the film's credibility as there was a massive fan base for Burton. He has quite the legacy. Alice in Wonderland 1951-2002 a 10 review. Alice in Wonderland, the remake, has been done very well. The story is based on the film from 1865 while taking key characters from the storyline from the 1951 film. I would class the 2010 version as a fantasy with low-key action, whereas the 1951 is a full-on children's fantasy film. Comedy is present in both films, however the 1951 is more innocent and the 2010 version has a lot more hard humour, which children wouldn't necessarily understand. This is the same for the horror factor. The horror in the 1951 would have been very scary to all ages because they weren't used to seeing horror stories in film, and if you're a children nowadays, watching the original can still be quite scary. However, the 2010 version is a lot more unnerving. It is not an out loud humour, but it's definitely tense at times. Overall, I personally don't think you can make a decision to say what film is better. They have different target audiences and appeal to them well. Although the very basic of the story is the same, the details are very different. They are both well-made, entertaining and satisfying fantasy films, but the 2010 is for a slightly older family. In 1951, Alice in Wonderland, the original, received 4.5 stars, and then 2010 received 3 stars. I believe this is because there wasn't many films to compare it to at the time, especially a Disney film, and it's had a lot more time to gain a rating over an average, whereas this one's only been out for 2 years. Thank you very much for watching.